Dr. Abari, a medical professional with a diverse background spanning studies in Ukraine and medical practice in Turkey and the UK, came under scrutiny for his actions during the MRCP Part 2 exam in June 2021, which was conducted online by BTL on behalf of the Royal College of Physicians. The investigation revealed that Dr. Abari had taken multiple unauthorized screenshots of exam questions, violating exam regulations, the candidate code of conduct, and a pre-exam non-disclosure agreement. Initially downplaying the number of screenshots taken, he was subsequently found to have been dishonest about the matter. Consequently, his exam results were invalidated, and he received a 2-year ban from retaking the exam. Despite appealing the decision and seeking an independent review, the ban was upheld. The case was eventually reported to the GMC. The tribunal considered witness statements and supplementary statements from both parties, Mr. A, MRCP Quality and Policy Manager, at the relevant time, and Dr. Abari. Oral testimony was also provided by both individuals during the hearing. Documentary evidence included various materials such as examination guidance, the code of conduct for examination applicants and candidates, informational documents from MRCP UK, a non-disclosure agreement, a report from BTL, email correspondence between MRCP UK and Dr. Abari, statements from Dr. Abari, a screenshare review spreadsheet by MRCP UK, further email communication, letters, video footage of Dr. Abari's exam, screenshots from the video footage, and testimonial evidence. The tribunal was tasked with determining whether Dr. Abari's fitness to practice was impaired due to his misconduct, based on the proven facts. The evidence considered included witness statements, documents, and submissions from both parties. The GMC argued that the proven facts amounted to misconduct, referencing specific paragraphs from good medical practice that were relevant. It was highlighted that the gravity of Dr. Abari's dishonesty was serious and brought the profession into disrepute. The GMC referred to case law, including the GMC versus Nwashuku case, to establish principles related to dishonesty and impairment. These principles emphasize that dishonesty is a serious form of misconduct and that a finding of impairment usually follows when dishonesty is proven. The GMC also stressed that the tribunal's focus should be on the present time while considering past events and any evidence of insight and remediation by Dr. Abari. The difficulty of remediating dishonesty due to its nature was also highlighted. The GMC acknowledged Dr. Abari's previously unblemished record but emphasized that in cases of dishonesty, impairment is typically found. The Stage 2 defense bundle provided by Dr. Abari, containing evidence of his continued professional development, was deemed insufficient by the GMC to demonstrate insight or remediation. In conclusion, the GMC argued that a finding of impaired fitness to practice was necessary to uphold proper standards of conduct. Dr. Abari's representative referred to the Stage 2 defense bundle containing evidence of Dr. Abari's continuous professional development as a demonstration of his commitment to improving his skills and knowledge. He acknowledged that Dr. Abari accepted the findings of dishonesty and the related misconduct as established by the tribunal. The counsel suggested that the focus should be on whether this misconduct results in impaired fitness to practice. The counsel proposed a 2-step approach. First, whether the findings constitute misconduct, and second, whether these findings lead to impairment. He referred to the definition of misconduct from the Roydens versus the General Medical Council case, stressing that the misconduct needed to be serious, and Dr. Abari accepted that the tribunal's findings on dishonesty were indeed serious. Regarding the breach of regulations code and disclosure agreement, the counsel argued that they were unintentional and arose from a mistaken belief that taking screenshots was acceptable. He emphasized that the key issue is the dishonesty aspect of the case. He referred to the Grant case and highlighted 2 aspects of impairment: risk to public and/or patients and upholding public confidence in the profession. He argued that Dr. Abari's full engagement in the proceedings and lack of any risk to patients should be considered. The counsel pointed out that the screenshots and subsequent email were linked to a single exam and did not involve patient care. He noted that Dr. Abari had no prior or subsequent instances of dishonesty. He acknowledged Dr. Abari's attempt to downplay the number of screenshots taken and defended his quick response in the email to as being an almost instantaneous reaction without causing any harm. Testimonial evidence was highlighted as a reflection of Dr. Abari's integrity, professionalism, and honesty in his clinical practice. Apologizing for the screenshot incident and his acceptance of mistakes were emphasized as positive traits. The counsel argued that Dr. Abari's dishonesty was not at the highest level of gravity and was confined to a specific context. He stated that Dr. Abari accepted his multiple screenshots and that the dishonesty revolved around his response in an email, where the number provided was still in the plural form. The tribunal found that Dr. Abari's actions breached the rules and regulations of the exam he took, leading to misconduct. While he was unaware of the prohibition on taking screenshots during the exam, his breach of rules, while amounting to misconduct, fell short of being considered serious. The tribunal acknowledged that Dr. Abari knowingly provided untruthful information about the number of screenshots he took during an email exchange. This act of dishonesty was considered serious misconduct by the tribunal, as it violated various principles from the Good Medical Practice Guidelines, particularly related to honesty, trustworthiness, and integrity. The tribunal then assessed whether this misconduct resulted in impairment of Dr. Abari's fitness to practice. Dr. Abari's representative accepted that, given the finding of dishonesty, his fitness to practice would be impaired. The tribunal considered the seriousness of the dishonesty, its isolated nature, and the circumstances surrounding it. They noted Dr. Abari's insight into the seriousness of his actions and his understanding of maintaining professional standards and public trust. Considering positive testimonial evidence and the low likelihood of repetition, the tribunal determined that Dr. Abari had some insight into his dishonesty. However, due to the severity of the misconduct and its occurrence during an examination investigation, the tribunal concluded that a finding of impairment was necessary to uphold professional standards and public confidence in the medical profession. As a result, the tribunal declared that Dr. Abari's fitness to practice is impaired due to his misconduct. The counsel for the GMC referred to the sanctions guidance and emphasized that the purpose of a sanction is not primarily punitive but should be proportionate and aligned with the overarching objective of protecting patients and maintaining public trust. She noted that the tribunal's previous finding of Dr. Abari's insight into his dishonesty was a mitigating factor. Additionally, she pointed to the Stage 2 defense bundle containing evidence of Dr. Abari's continuous professional development as an indicator of his efforts to stay updated in his medical skills and knowledge. The counsel referred to paragraphs 120 and 124 of the guidance, which emphasized the importance of honesty and trustworthiness in medical practice. She argued that while dishonesty might not directly harm patients, it is particularly serious when it undermines public trust in the medical profession. The counsel mentioned the previous determination where the tribunal found a necessity for a finding of impairment due to the context of an investigation into academic misconduct. When discussing the potential sanctions, the counsel argued that taking no action would be inappropriate given the circumstances, and conditions wouldn't be applicable. She suggested that suspension would be the appropriate and proportionate sanction. She referred to relevant paragraphs in the sanction guidance that describe factors indicating that suspension may be appropriate, such as a serious breach of medical practice, the doctor having insight, and no significant risk of repeating behavior. The counsel suggested that if the tribunal decides on a suspension, the duration should be determined by its judgment. She also proposed a review to be directed for a future tribunal to assess whether Dr. Abari has further demonstrated insight. The counsel, representing Dr. Abari, acknowledged that the situation didn't warrant taking no action or imposing conditions. He agreed that a suspension would likely be an appropriate and proportionate sanction. He suggested that the tribunal should consider a relatively short suspension, possibly lasting 1 or 2 months. The counsel argued that Dr. Abari's misconduct wasn't fundamentally incompatible with continued registration. He referred to the tribunal's earlier findings that the dishonesty was brief and took place within a quick email aimed at downplaying the number of screenshots taken. He emphasized that the dishonesty was relatively minor and that Dr. Abari had promptly admitted to certain parts of the allegation, showing some insight into the seriousness of his actions. The defense opposed the idea of erasure as a sanction, believing it would go beyond what's appropriate or proportionate for this case. He highlighted that Dr. Abari's conduct didn't involve harm to patients, abuse of trust, or a breach of position. He also noted that Dr. Abari's cooperation with the proceedings and his willingness to make admissions demonstrated his commitment to resolving the matter. The counsel further presented personal mitigation on Dr. Abari's behalf and discussed the potential impact of a suspension on his family. He concluded by asserting that a short suspension was fitting and that a review might not be necessary given the absence of concerns about Dr. Abari posing a risk. The tribunal, after considering the submissions from both parties, deliberated on the appropriate sanction for Dr. Abari. The tribunal's decision was guided by the overarching objective of protecting the public, maintaining public confidence in the profession, and upholding professional standards. The tribunal emphasized that its decision on sanction should be proportionate, considering the interests of the public and the doctor. It considered the aggravating and mitigating factors of the case, acknowledging Dr. Abari's insight into the seriousness of his dishonesty and his demonstration of ongoing professional development. The tribunal then reviewed potential sanctions in ascending order, starting with taking no action, but found that such a course would be inappropriate given the finding of impaired fitness to practice due to the dishonesty. The option of imposing conditions on Dr. Abari's registration was also deemed unsuitable, as his misconduct wasn't related to health issues, practice deficiencies, or language proficiency. The tribunal proceeded to consider suspension, recognizing its deterrent effect and its appropriateness for serious misconduct that falls short of being fundamentally incompatible with continued registration. The tribunal found Dr. Abari's dishonesty to be a serious but isolated incident, not reflective of his normal character. Considering his acknowledgement of fault and the low likelihood of repetition, the tribunal determined that a period of suspension would be the appropriate and proportionate response. The tribunal then settled on a suspension period of 4 weeks, deeming it sufficient to uphold public confidence and professional standards, given the nature of the misconduct. The tribunal concluded that a longer suspension or erasure would be disproportionate. Lastly, considering the low risk of repetition and the short suspension duration, the tribunal decided that a review hearing was unnecessary in this case, as it would not provide further value and the public interest had already been served by the suspension. The tribunal also did not find it suitable to impose an immediate order.